Hello Patreon and YouTube, this is Nathan P. Butler, this is my YouTube channel, and this is our project update for April 2018. It's coming a little later in the month this time. I've been dealing with some dental issues still, the tooth that was removed, and I think I explained this before, but basically I had an old root canal from back in the day when they didn't have carbon fiber rods, they were just metal rods, and those metal rods were basically holding the tooth together because it had no nerves or anything inside it and had a root canal and had a crown on it. And apparently over time, my gritting my teeth all the time, you would think I was stressed or something. My gritting my teeth all the time wound up causing one of those metal rods to shift and crack through the root and start stabbing out of my gum. So they went through and they removed the tooth. And then after having removed that tooth, I had a temporary covering called a bridge, until eventually getting the final bridge, which is basically sort of a cap that goes on the two teeth on either side of the hole where that tooth used to be, and then has sort of a fake tooth kind of thing that goes across it instead of into it, that basically replaces it so you can still eat normally. And because of sinus pressure and everything else, because of where that is, just as the weather was changing and the sinus pressure really hit, that always makes my teeth ache a little bit, it made it excruciating for a few days. So for a little bit there, right around the time I usually would have recorded about a week ago, I was getting my butt kicked by tooth pain. So now, thankfully, that is back to normal. Just a little bit of soreness, pretty much all gone. So finally, I can give you an update on what's going on. And hopefully this time make it fairly quick, because there's really not a whole lot that's beyond the norm for us this particular month. I am playing around with the settings here. This is the normal lighting, but it's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon when I'm recording this, so not as much sunlight coming into the window. I'm wondering if the light balance is what was causing some of the reds, like the books back here, to be flashing, sort of, in the last video that I did, so hopefully this will work that out. I've got it set on the regular full width, full HD width, instead of the zoomed-in version, so hopefully if that was part of the problem, the automatic zooming, hopefully that won't be an issue. Though I would note here that I'm still trying to work on a better setup for recording, because I'm on a desk that barely has the width enough for the computer that has the webcam sitting on top of it and the microphone. And unfortunately, because of that, I'm not able really to set up a tripod or anything that would lift the webcam higher. So as of right now, when I do this wider view, you're probably going to constantly see the top of the blue snowball mic sitting in front of me here while I record. You'll also get a bigger view of me, so instead of seeing maybe from here up, you'll see sort of from here up, as you're seeing now, and then you'll see a little bit more of what's back here. Usually you could see up to maybe that second shelf there. Now you'll see a little bit of the further shelf. You usually could see most of this shelf here, but not much, if any, of that one. Now you're seeing that one, which means I probably ought to set them up to look kind of cool on camera, because right now this one is set up that way up to a certain point, but not this one. This one's basically all my stuff sitting there going, hey, at some point you need to actually put this on from the Star Wars Home Video Library, with the exception of the ones on the top shelf that have already been covered. I'm rearranging my shelves to try to make it actually look a little bit better in the room itself. First, let me thank the supporters over on Patreon. That is patreon.com/NathanPButler. Again, there are 3 tiers over on the Patreon. The first tier, $1, that's it. That will get you access to getting a thanks and a mention here within the video. The official line is that it gets you the thanks at the end in the credits, but we have a small enough cadre right now of Patreon supporters that I always try to mention everybody by name here on these update episodes. The $5 and up tier, that's going to get you access to exclusive Clone Wars and eventually Rebels and other audio commentaries that I'm doing. As of right now, each month you get 2 different audio commentaries, usually for the Clone Wars episodes. And then, of course, there's that $10 and up tier, which gives you access to an exclusive Q&A every month. For what it's worth, let me note here, for those who are part of that Nobility of the Butlerniverse, the highest tier, right now we do not have any questions submitted in April yet for an exclusive Q&A at the beginning of May. If there aren't any questions, there won't be able to be an exclusive Q&A video at the beginning of May. There has to be stuff to actually answer. So if you have questions and you've been waiting and kind of sitting back going, well, I'll just let other people ask, now's the time to jump in and give yourself an opportunity to get those thoughts out there, those thoughts or those questions, as the case may be. So, to check out our Patreon cadre, as I said, I want to give a big shout out and thank you to Our current travelers through the Butler universe: Thomas Myers, Mitch Godfrey, Martin Dahl, Austin Pierce, Jeremiah Mustard, and S.W. Chris. Our current denizens of the Butler universe: Jeff Ellis, Joey Zitzman, Stephen M., Sam Howard, Chris Morgan, Robert Medina, Bobby Craig, and Jason Hunt. And our current nobility of the Butler universe: that's Brian Snook, David Ray, Gary Sherwood, Benjamin Handelman, Andrew Bettis, and Aaron Melzak. As for new releases, through the Patreon, we had 2 new exclusive audio commentaries released in the last month. Those are for the Clone Wars episodes Cloak of Darkness and Lair of Grievous. Of course, they're finishing out that 3-parter that began back with Bombad Jedi, which does mean that we're coming up on Dooku Captured and Gungan General. Episodes that help to epitomize some of the things that were wrongest. Yes, that's right, wrongest. Because it's wrong, right? Not more wrong, but wrongest. So the wrong is part of the word. Anyway, that were the wrongest about the Clone Wars at the time. So we'll be seeing those very soon. And of course, we had the exclusive Q&A for last month get released in early April. That, of course, was exclusive Q&A number 6. As for podcasts, of course, I'm involved in 2 regularly at this point: Cloud City Casino, which I host with Michael Morris over on StarWarsReport.com, talking about Star Wars in gaming. Not end gaming, in gaming, apparently. I didn't realize that until he had said it about a dozen times. And then, of course, I also host Star Wars Beyond the Films with Mark Herleman over on StarWarsReport.com as well, talking about, well, Star Wars stories beyond the films generally, though sometimes straying into other topics beyond specific stories, but often legends and canon topics. And in those cases, we've had a couple of new episodes, 1 for each. And one of them is one that really kind of stands out to me in my years of podcasting. So for Cloud City Casino, we had the release of Cloud City Casino episode number, I had to check there, 81, which is basically our take on Legion, now that Legion has been released, right? So we had an episode before that talking about what was expected from Legion, my frustrations with the fact that Legion's minis aren't painted, and how it really wasn't aimed at the same target audience as Imperial Assault, and if it's trying to capture the Imperial Assault audience, then, you know, how does that work? And so we wound up talking about it post-release. I had to eat my words a little bit on some things now that I actually had it in my hands, and we took some time to talk about the upcoming, at the time, return of microtransactions to Star Wars Battlefront 2. Of course, now they are back. So in our next episode, expect us to talk a little bit more about that and on how well or poorly they have been implemented. Then, of course, you've got the big one, which is Star Wars Beyond the Films number 234. And at my suggestion, Mark used a term that I bring up in the episode from the TV series and novel series The Expanse as sort of the title of the episode. The title is Well Voila, the State of Our Fandom 2, because we had done an episode on the State of Our Fandom before. And in this case, Well Voila is a term that is used by the Belters in The Expanse, in the Belter Creole dialect, which basically means traitor to my people. And the idea was that we wanted to do sort of a deep dive into the idea of toxic fandom and sort of what is going on, what do we see in the fan community, where is it going wrong, where is it working well, what can be done about the toxicity, if anything, how can one sort of insulate themselves from the toxicity, and so on, along with giving sort of our personal perspectives on certain things that goes very deep and sometimes very dark, but hopefully ends on somewhat at least of a hopeful note, at least on an individual basis, if not on a community-wide basis. I've been podcasting since 2002, right? Chrono Radio, Butlerniverse, Fan Audio Made Easy, the EU Review, Fan Audio News Source, Republic Forces Radio Network, Rebels Roundtable, Beyond the Films, Cloud City Casino, so on and so on and so on. So I've been doing this basically for about 16 years. I have hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of podcast content that I've produced or co-hosted and someone else has produced to actually put out for release. And in all that time, I'm not sure that I've ever participated in or been part of an episode that is as needed, as important perhaps, as this episode. Okay, so if you've never listened to Star Wars Beyond the Films before, you're not at all into the books or comics, you don't need to be to listen to this one. Okay, it is Star Wars Beyond the Films, episode number 234, entitled Well Voila, The State of Our Fandom 2. If you are at all someone who cares about the state of current fandom, it's probably one to check out. And you can find that and the new episode of Cloud City Casino talking about Legion for a bit lighter fare over at StarWarsReport.com. As for YouTube, quite a bit of new content since the last update. The last update episode, by the way, was on March 28th, so if you're trying to sort of get a sense here of how long it's been since that and when was this stuff produced, it's been within basically the last month. I'm recording this episode on April 28th. We had quite a few new episodes from the Star Wars home video library, and we will have more coming up because I now have stuff to show you like the Last Jedi Movie Next box from Japan that's way bigger than the ones for the previous two films. But we took a look at, in episode number 154, The Force Awakens South Korean 2D plus 3D Collector's Edition. We took a look in episode 155 at the Clone Wars Complete Seasons 1 through 5 on Blu-ray and DVD from the UK. In episode 156, we looked at other UK The Clone Wars Blu-ray boxed sets, although since then, there is another one up there that I didn't know existed at the time that kind of makes sense, seasons 1 through 4 that we're going to take a look at in a future episode. We also took a look in episode 157 at another Clone Wars Blu-ray box set, this one from France, that included a little Funko Pop Yoda as part of the package, which I thought was pretty cool. Episode 158 took a look at The Force Awakens Steelbook from Italy. And episode 159 took a look at the Phantom Menace widescreen VHS from the UK. We also went back and kind of circled back around to something we'd seen before and had episode 70.1, the point 1 meaning it's a supplemental episode to episode 70 that already existed, which was a look at the second bonus lightsaber action DVD that was packed in with toys at one time. This time actually looking at the toy it was packed in with, which was the Darth Vader lightsaber toy that you may be able to see up there on the very top of the shelves there. So quite a few episodes are from the Star Wars Home Video Library, but I gotta say I've actually got quite a few that still need to be recorded. There were 3 video game live streams that I did since that last update. One was a Let's Play for the game Preta Vendetta Rising for PlayStation VR. I like to do PlayStation VR Let's Plays, give fans a sense of basically what they're getting themselves into if they actually spend the money on PlayStation VR games, because some of them are awesome and some of them are crap. We also did a quick Let's Play of Crisis on the Planet of the Apes, which is another PlayStation VR game. Both of those recommended if you've got the money, but they're not ones to really go out of your way to get. And then I did do a live stream that brought back the Star Wars Battlefront live stream podcast, as I call it, which was episode number 90, which was a look at the return of crystals in that game, the return of microtransactions. I'm tending to do the Battlefront live streams when there is something noteworthy to look at. So that one looked at the return of crystals and actually looked at the new Ewok hunt mode that is a timed exclusive kind of thing. So we looked at that, we looked at where the crystals can be bought, we looked at what they can be spent on and what credits can be spent on and all that kind of stuff. So for those who have been following the game's evolution outside of actually playing it, it gives you a chance to just sort of see how all of that stuff is working now that they've brought microtransactions back. In terms of Star Wars product reviews, just had one for Fantasy Flight Games this time, and that was the Promise of Power Force Pack for the Star Wars LCG, or Living Card Game, for Fantasy Flight Games. That is the last of the Force Packs. So, as far as I know, all of the coverage that I've been doing of the Star Wars LCG is basically done now, because that's the last product they're going to release for it. But that was objective sets 285 through 289, which of course I always look at very quickly to kind of show you what cards are in each objective set, so you can decide for yourselves which ones you might want to pick up if you are still playing that game. Speaking of card games, finally got back into producing some episodes of Nate's favorite deck building games. These were episodes that had been recorded a long time ago that I just hadn't got a chance to sit down and actually edit together yet, and did a kind of a blitz back around April 10th through 12th, give or take, and actually put out all the rest of the ones that were already recorded for the Marvel deck building game. So that basically took us through basically modern day. So now if you are into deck building games, or particularly into Marvel Legendary, or Legendary Marvel, however you want to say it, from Upper Deck, you can now watch that series where it says Nate's favorite deck building games, Legendary Marvel part whatever. If you start with part 1 and work your way all the way up through the last of those episodes, you'll be able to see not only how it gets played, but see the new mechanics and concepts introduced in every single small and large expansion from the beginning all the way up until the most recent one. And I'll be keeping that updated as more stuff gets released. Back on April 18th, also did a quick call for questions. I was getting frustrated because I hadn't had a chance to really record much lately, and we hadn't really had a lot of interaction from the standpoint of a Q&A video recently, unless you were part of that highest tier on Patreon. So I just kind of put out a call for questions, and very quickly got a lot of questions for a Q&A video. So wound up putting out 2 Q&A videos through my vlog, The Voice of Reason or Lack Thereof, on YouTube. So we had Nathan P. Butler Star Wars vlog number 24, Your Questions Answered, April 2018, part 1 of 2, and then part 2 of 2, which you'll find having been released on April 21st. So lots of new stuff on YouTube. That's tending to be where a lot of my focus is in terms of creating new content for immediate release. Beyond that, how are things going for the next edition of A Saga on Home Video, which of course is my book, A Saga on Home Video, A Fan's Guide to U.S. Star Wars Home Video Releases, the first edition of which can be found now on Amazon and elsewhere. It's just faster to order through Amazon. About 300 pages. Very detailed look at the Star Wars home video market in the U.S. and the different releases over the years. About 300 grayscale pictures in there so you can actually see the products, taking pictures from my own collection. As I'm working on a second edition, just kind of slowly as I get time, one of the questions that's been raised is, when should it be released? My original plan was 2020, to wait until after Episode 9 was out and have that covered in the book. So it comes out in 2019. Its home video release is probably around March or April of 2020. Finish up with that, give it a month or two, and sometime maybe mid to late 2020, put out a second edition. But what's been happening is I'm now taking color pictures for the book. I've got my photo box that I've showed you recently. Pop that thing open. Took a lot of pictures. I've replaced about 100 pictures just in the first 2 to 3 chapters of the book at this point, and they are beautiful in color. And what I'm seeming to see happen is, as I'm mentioning the fact that I'm replacing them with color pictures to get ready for this later edition, which has nothing really written for it yet as far as new releases go or anything like that, people are like, wow, I really would like to see this updated version soon. So I'm sort of toying with the idea of maybe planning for, I don't know, maybe like a late 2019 release or something. It's really kind of hard to say because what I'm looking at is there's a 1.5-year gap between when Solo hits theaters next month and when we finally get to see Episode 9. So because there's a 1.5-year gap in theaters, that also means there's going to be a 1.5-year gap in terms of home video releases for them. So in that 1.5-year gap, that's a perfect time to release a new edition and get it finalized before another release comes out and I have to scramble to include another one, but it would mean not including Episode 9. So it's kind of up in the air when I'm going to do it, whether it's going to be after Solo's on home video or if it's going to be after we see the release of Episode 9. It really kind of depends at this point on just how fast the process goes of replacing all the pictures, adding new pictures. I'm actually a little concerned about file size right now. I may have to break it up and see if you can sort of upload 2 files. They get combined into a final book form through CreateSpace, which is how I've done it before, because I'm looking at almost a 300 megabyte file at this point, and that's only with maybe 1/3 of the pictures swapped out from grayscale to color, and that's not even counting new pictures being added. So we'll see, but it is looking beautiful with all of those color pictures in it. So getting the light box was definitely a good idea. Then, of course, the last project to mention here is the Star Wars Timeline Gold. The one YouTube video I didn't mention that's been released since the last update is that pretty much immediately thereafter, I released a video that basically announced that the Star Wars Timeline Gold is ending. That its new edition for 2018 will be the last edition that gets put out for that project for numerous reasons, the primary 3 of which that I talked about in that video were the fandom toxicity stuff, which we also address again in Star Wars Beyond the Films 234, the loose approach being taken to continuity that's going on right now, it seems, and chronology that's going on right now from an official standpoint, and the fact that we're having a baby. Now, we did, by the way, just have the midpoint ultrasound and confirmed what the previous ultrasound pretty much had showed us when the baby sort of flashed the ultrasound, but we wanted to be sure. Yes, it is baby Cade, not baby Leia. So Cade Franklin Butler will be joining us in September. But with all those things going on and the time sink that the timeline involves becoming less and less of a reasonable, rational, doable kind of thing, it's going to be wrapping up. And I haven't had a chance to do a lot of work on it in the last month or so because we've been dealing with, me being down from dental stuff, all the work stuff that goes on when you're a teacher and you're getting into the last month and a half of courses, a lot of doctor visits and whatnot for my wife and the baby. But I have been working my way through the novel Last Shot, which is the newest one to be put out, which is nice for timeliners because the vast majority of it gives you specific dates for everything, which is awesome. So that will, of course, be included whenever I get to that point. I've been keeping up with the comics. I'll be summarizing them here soon, and basically just trying to keep up with the new stuff and, of course, eventually getting Solo on there. I have decided, though, that because of the time involved, any new Fantasy Flight Games materials that aren't already on the current working copy of the timeline won't be on there. There won't be time, for instance, for me to read all the way through any new source books that are released between now and the release of the timeline here in, like, end of July, early August, to be able to go through, take notes on all of them, transfer them over, etc. Because something like that, something like Ghosts of Dathomir, it's a bigger time sink than anything else for the timeline has ever been, with the exception of the Old Republic MMO. So those will definitely not show up, but that also means I should be able to put out video reviews of Fantasy Flight Games RPG books much faster now, because I won't be having to wait until I've read through the whole thing and taken notes, and then transferred those notes onto the timeline so I can pull out the little post-it notes, so now it looks like a regular book, so now I can do the review. No, now I can read through it, speed read the thing, do a quick review, done, good to go. So you'll get to see those reviews faster now. But at the moment, I am still looking at late July, early August. I'm trying to make my way through Last Shot right now. Again, it's pretty good. I just haven't had a lot of time to do a lot of reading for it. And yeah, just kind of keeping up with things. At this point, we are still on pace for a late July, early August release of that final edition of the Star Wars Timeline Gold. And the opening letter, the opening message that changes for every release, the opening letter that's in that story group canon document, that has already been basically written for the final edition. I'll just do a quick once-over of it right before release to make sure I don't want to tweak anything with that. So I got to be honest with you, it sort of feels very cathartic to know that this is basically the end of it. I know that I've got to get Rebels finished, Forces of Destiny finished, get Battlefront 2 on there, keep up with some of the new novels, keep up with the new comics, get Solo on there and all of Solo's related books as they come out. So there's still a lot of work to be done before that eventual final release. But it's nice to sort of feel like, if it gets on there, it gets on there. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And being okay with that for the first time, instead of feeling as though, well, if it doesn't get on there, it just means more for next year. Well, there isn't a next year anymore. I also am pretty excited for the new Star Wars Resistance TV series, a new animated series in anime style that they've announced, because this is the first time I'm going to be able to sit back, or I guess first time since, Ewoks, right? Where I'm going to be able to sit back and watch a Star Wars cartoon, watch a Star Wars TV show, watch a Star Wars anything, and not be sitting back there thinking, oh God, how is this going to fit with the existing continuity? And constantly be looking for where there are issues. And I'm betting there's going to be issues because they've already managed to take the Poe Dameron comic and constantly slam that against things like Before the Awakening and the Join the Resistance books. They already can't keep shit straight for that. And now we're going to have a cartoon series taking place in the same era that's going to include Poe and Phasma and possibly other characters who have appeared in the Poe Dameron comic and Before the Awakening and such. So I expect a potential train wreck, continuity-wise, for Resistance, unless they play it really, really careful. But you know what? It's not my problem anymore! And that is a wonderful feeling. I know, it's a very selfish way to look at the new cartoon series, but I haven't been able to be excited for a Star Wars cartoon series without being concerned about continuity or chronology for it. Really ever. Right? I mean, I've been doing the Timeline Gold since it was just the Star Wars Timeline 1.0 or the Star Wars Timeline Project in 1997. Okay, we're talking almost 21 full years at this point. And that's when most of that stuff like Clone Wars and Rebels and such and Forces of Destiny have all been released. Even the Clone Wars micro series was released in there. It's not my problem. And that feels nice. It's almost like in my head, I'm hearing that, you know, reunited and it feels so good. And I'm thinking, not my problem and it feels so good. Or something like that, you know? Continuity doesn't have to be understood. Or at least I don't have to be the one to sort stuff out when it contradicts and they don't give us official answers on what the hell is going on. So I'm excited to get that final release out. Work is still proceeding apace. But yeah, it's definitely, I can already feel the weight being lifted when it comes to that. And that is a good thing. Side note, not related to projects at all, but for those who are curious, yes, we are past the midway point when it comes to the pregnancy. We're in, I think, the 21st week or so now, so we still got a ways to go. Baby's due at the beginning of September, and we are slowly getting the room ready. Actually, this same weekend that I'm recording this, I'm going to be going through, and we have a room that we set aside basically as a nursery when we bought the house, because we wanted to have a kid someday. So we got a 3-bedroom house, a big master bedroom for us, 1 bedroom that got turned into my Star Wars office, and then 1 bedroom that was basically set aside for the kid. But up until now, we just kind of stored stuff in that just didn't have another place because we weren't getting it ready for a child yet. So now we sort of cleared all that stuff out. We got a bunch of baby stuff in there, you know, stuff from a surprise baby shower when we took a trip to visit family up in Indiana, and other stuff that have been gifts that have been coming in, like a friend of my wife's that she used to do boxing with. Yes, she's a former boxer. They've sent us basically a crib that I now have to put together, and I'm going to be going through and basically just doing a big clean sweep of the room, vacuuming, dusting, all that kind of stuff. And then I'll be putting the crib together and finally starting to lay stuff out so it looks like an actual child's room instead of looking like a room with a bunch of stuff for a child in it just randomly tossed in there. So, you know, it's getting closer. So, you know, God willing, everything will go smoothly or continue to go smoothly. A minimum of other hospital visits. We did just have another one recently, but everything checked out okay, which is kind of a precautionary thing. So hopefully everything will go smoothly, and by September, life will change dramatically here in the Butler household, but you can still expect the ongoing projects to continue, whether it's through YouTube, whether it's the podcast, whether it's the stuff through Patreon. The only thing, as of now, being directly affected is what was already probably going to be wrapping up anyway at some point soon, which, of course, is the Star Wars Timeline Gold. So just know that the other things that you enjoy that I produce, or hopefully that you enjoy, or at least tolerate, but if you only tolerate it, why are you watching? Hopefully, all of those will be able to continue unabated. It just may sometimes have a little guest star popping up from time to time if I'm in here recording and little baby Cade is in like a little playpen off to the side here. I can certainly edit out the baby talk, but every once in a while we may just have to pop him up into frame because everybody loves babies and kittens. Apparently babies and kittens. All right, folks, so with that, we get rid of the meh lighting. Maybe shouldn't have worn gray for this lighting. I kind of look a little pasty like Hux. But that's our update for the month of April 2018. We're back next month with an update, of course, by which time Solo will either be out or about to be out, depending on when I record that. Expect some vlog episodes, or a vlog episode at least, dealing with Solo after the fact, once I get a chance to see it in late May. And, of course, if you are on Patreon and you are one of that top tier of supporters of nobility of the Butlerverse, remember, if you want to get questions out there for an exclusive Q&A for the month of May, make sure you get those questions in the question collection thread over at patreon.com/NathanPButler. If we do not have questions for me to answer, there won't be able to be an exclusive Q&A for the beginning of May, and we'll just have to hold it until the beginning of June. So just, you know, get your money's worth, right? That's the exclusive thing for being in that top tier. I appreciate you wanting to support me at a level that's above that $5 tier, but get your money's worth out of it. Ask some questions. Have some fun. So, thank you all for watching. We'll be back with another update next month.